We're live, Chair.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Conservation Heritage Area Committee. My name's Paul McLaughlin. I'm chairman of the committee. First item on the agenda today is apologies. I have Ian Goodwin, Max Craven, Paul Stanton. That's it. There are, as far as I'm aware, no late items to be introduced by the chair. Nothing on board. Any declarations of interest? No, I think it was only Paul Stanton that he's offered his apologies. Okay, so minutes of the last meeting held on 3rd of July.
Just note, since seeing that apologies were received from Robert Evans and Chris Collinson, which weren't reflected in the minutes. So can I ask that they're agreed subject to that amendment?
Yep. Okay. So subject to the you being noted as absent. Yeah. So we'll put both of these. Carol. Yeah. So thank you. Okay, applications determined since the last meeting. You'll all have a chance to have a look at the information given. You'll note that on the market hall there was the installation of 4 non-illuminated signs which were approved. If you recall, we had the application before us with 8 signs. We objected to that and we got halfway, so half of them were approved. So, the other one of interest was One Abbey Yard in Darley Abbey, which was the installation of garage doors. We recommended that they ought to be traditional timber garage doors to retain the parapet upstand over the top of the door. But unfortunately that didn't go forward and it was approved against our recommendation. Okay, so applications not being considered this afternoon. Any comments on the applications not being considered? No, all happy on that. Thank you. Right, moving on to the main bulk of the meeting, which is the applications to be considered. Ian, you want to get yourself synced up? Right, the first application on the list is number 2 to 6 The Strand and 15 to 25 St James's Street. This is both a full planning application and a listed building application affecting the Grade 2 listed building and, of course, within the city centre conservation area. The application is for the conversion of the 1st, 2nd and 3rd floors to 24 residential units. The scheme is specifically apartments, not HMOs, which I'm really pleased about. There is a rather generic heritage statement which has been prepared, which is possibly a little bit weak in that it's short of information and lacks some analysis. There are also a distinct lack of photographs with the report. There are some photographs contained with the application itself, but altogether it was a little bit confusing. That appended up also to the information and drawings submitted. They lacked context and in many instances were quite confusing. At first sight, it would appear that it was the intention to replace all the windows. But if you read slightly more carefully and looked at the details, it actually is the provision of secondary glazing behind the existing windows, so the existing sash windows remain in place. I would like that to be clarified, though, as part of the application approval, that our interpretation is right. There are some replacement windows to the rear, which you'll have seen on the application, and we'll refer to in a bit more detail on those. Externally, the Strand elevation remains pretty much undisturbed. You might recall that we had applications for the shop frontages a couple of meetings ago, and colour schemes, particularly on the Strand thing, which was on the St James's Street frontage. There is actually a new access point, one being blocked off. There is a detail for the access point, which you will have seen on the details. This involves the formation of a type of entrance lobby pod. New door is set in recess, which it's not just an issue, but they sit behind the pilasters. For some reason, they're sat a lot further back from the pilasters. So there is a detail about the full problems. See, looking into the yard area over the top of the tram sheds, you'll recall last month that there is potential that that area is going to be opened up to development. We saw a scheme prepared for that. So those rear elevations actually become very important in the context of this scheme. It's the intention to install several new windows at the back and replacement of some existing ill-proportioned windows with flush casements, which is welcome. You could see the windows on that elevation there installed on the screen at the moment. So they're going to be flush casements. The proportions isn't such that they could be sash windows, so I think they're right to go with a casement type. You'll also see on that elevation as well that there is the inclusion of some MVHR units, ventilation units, located on the rear, and suggested service routes within the building. There are no great details as far as that's concerned. We are also advised that the building is suffering from quite a lot of dry rot, and you'll have seen reports that clearly the eradication of the dry rot is very important, but even more important is to actually eradicate the cause of the dry rot in the first place, which I hope they will be addressing. Internally, there are clearly quite a lot of significant additions in terms of petitions, etc. The lack of photographs and drawn information doesn't actually help us interpret if there's any interruption in historic fabric, and I personally would like some more information in relation to that. There are some minor alterations to existing structure, which you've seen on the plans marketing, which is relatively minimal. My main concern is that we have very little detail in relation to that. So we would like to see the effect on cornices, skirtings, etc., and how the new petitioning system will impact on them. I'll remind you that we are dealing here with a grade 2 listed building. It's not the interior counts as much as the exterior. So the information is critical. We're also advised that acoustic insulation is going to be applied to the floors, potentially as an overlay of approximately 125 millimetres. Again, we're lacking in detail here, but the implications of that extra 125 millimetres on the scheme and the alterations to the historic fabric are quite significant, particularly in relation to the stairwells, which are probably one of the best preserved elements of the building. So if you're going to increase the floor height, you've got implications on the stair rising, of course, as well. And of course, door head heights and other such things. So really, that I think is a resume of the the situation as I see it. So I'll open it up to general comment.
So are these offices at present? What are
There are offices at present. Yeah, so it's a change of use, commercial to residential.
Yeah,
which is to be welcomed.
Yeah, because the use of offices are going down anyway. So anyone who owns a building would want to utilize the space to maximum.
Chris?
Yeah, like you're right, welcome the investment that's being proposed in. It's an important range of buildings within the city centre. Each time I come into the city centre, it seems to be a bit quieter. Just walk through Market Square. So the more we can get people back into using buildings, living in buildings, then the vibrancy will come back, and that will in itself then lead to further investment. So the scheme, has to be welcomed in general terms. Like you, Paul, I struggle a little bit with understanding precisely some of the things. And I fell into the trap of. So overall, there didn't seem to be a huge amount of original fabric being lost. I know there's some new doors being created, but it's relatively limited, and the scale of the type of accommodation is better than we've seen on other schemes. So it's resulted in less change than as perhaps happened elsewhere. I understood that the stair case that's coming out is a much
more recent
one. So that's overall. I think if we could just tie down some of the details, be absolutely clear about. Obviously, being able to be approved as a scheme, with certainly echo of one you, where there is need for parity or a different approach, but in general, they tend to be limited in scale, given the overall size of the range of buildings. So the sooner it happens, the better.
Carol?
I know Chris said about the scale, but I was a little bit concerned that it may be slightly overdeveloped. I mean, it just is my opinion that although it's not an HMO, it still looks rather overdeveloped. It is to be welcomed. It's a fantastic idea that people are going to live in these places, but it just looks quite overdeveloped. I'm thinking about the internal drainage and how it's all going to work. It just looks a little bit overscaled.
Any comment?
Well, I agree with Chris. I think it's wonderful that this building's been brought back into life. I just walked past it again just now and get life back in it. It's just what Derby needs. As you say, fairly minimal change to the fabric. I think it's inevitable. If you're changing from commercial to residential on the inside, there's going to be some, alteration to fabric, but it's invisible to the public. I mean, any major features will be cited in the listing and protected in any case, wouldn't they? So I don't really have any comments. I just think it happens. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you. Luke?
I'd just say welcome and encourage the development as already been. It's great to see one that it's not an HMO, and I mean I'll take Carol's point about, but it's a distinct improvement on many of the schemes that we see. So it's a matter of ironing out those concerns that you've raised.
Okay. Right, George, any comments?
Yeah, I thought it was a good scheme in principle. But again, there was a lot of documents and it was quite difficult to see the wood from the trees, really. You know, for example, there's the noise report, which identifies that I think flat 11 on the first floor wasn't suitable for residential accommodation. And yet
That's
it's
on the next application, actually. But,
Oh, so sorry.
it's all right.
Looking at schemes as a
That's
whole.
what confusion comes
Yeah.
down to.
But I think a more focused response from the agents on some of the details that you've mentioned about the heritage impact, and obviously we had a heritage impact statement, but it didn't, in terms of the internal works, it was quite hard to tally up what work affected the significance in what way. So a bit more of a focused response would be good.
Okay. Okay, Steve,
How many new residents did you say there were?
24 units.
I'm just wondering, is there any parking provision?
It's within the city centre, so technically there is no parking provision required.
Sorry, Paul. I don't know why is the distinction between apartments and HMOs? Both the schemes will provide residence to the people. So what's the difference? Why is committee thinking differently on HMOs and apartments?
It's a good point. Something.
Yeah,
we
we-
talk about later.
They shouldn't be-
Can we leave it till
Yeah,
later?
you can.
Yeah.
Does the application talk about the sustainability, any use of solar energy or anything like that? No.
I think in a building like this, because they're putting the heat recovery units in, and it's a listed building, I think that's about the limitation. We've not got any details in terms of insulating the external walls or the roofing. That's the sort of information we're lacking at the moment. Yeah, but in terms of carbon footprint, that is remaining and being converted. It has got to be positive. Okay, so generally it's an objection subject to refinement and additional detail, clarification of Okay, so moving on, we have the next application, which is in tandem really to the previous one, which is number 9 to 11 St James's Street, and that again is the change of use of the first and second floors from commercial use to residential use to 5 residential units. Now, these obviously linked to the previous application in terms of usage and the context. This group of buildings fronting St James's Street is not actually listed, but it's part of the city centre conservation area. Again, the application documents are at best confusing and need careful understanding. The sound insulation, acoustic measures, etc., are slightly more complex in this one, in that we've got a nightclub adjacent to the top right-hand corner. So again, that's something to be considered. On the positive side, again, yeah, there are apartment use and not HMOs. There are numerous internal alterations and additional petitioning. The design of the apartments being somewhat dictated by the noise issues, as you've seen in the noise report. At present, the property on the ground floor, the nail bar, is actually excluded from the application because there's in the applicant's ownership. So that's not part of what we're considering. Hopefully it will come as part of this scheme. Again, frontage windows remain much as they are, save the addition of secondary glazing units, and the shop fronts remain as they are because, again, we approved those previously. To the rear of the property are some additional windows, indeed some replacement windows again, flush casements, and you can see on the screen at the moment the somewhat random nature of those windows. There's a lack of rhythm there, where all the rest of the building has a rhythm of windows. They seem to be sort of more purposeful in terms of the spaces that they're lighting, but I'd like to see a bit more refinement in that respect. And I think really that sort of sums up the application, repeating, sake of not repeating, said on the previous application. So there are MVA units again. So any further comments on that?
I suppose the environmental health colleagues, will give consideration to the relationship with the night adjoining use in the planning application, rather than, and that's really not particularly for us, but it does have the knock-on effect that how they deal with that issue, and I don't know how far that's been explored. It's by those people, because obviously that's an existing use that's there, and obviously whatever the noise,
That's right.
the adjoining use is sometimes it means that has to be quite severe measures taken to get it to a reasonable residential environment next door, and that may in the fullness of time result in more insulation work and so on than even now.
It's almost as if they've left it a little bit in abeyance, because they've excluded one unit, saying that acoustics can't be met at this moment in time, but there's actually submitted a layout for it, which again is quite confusing. So I think some more information on that would be beneficial. So are we happy to just repeat what we said on the first application? We're happy with principle.
I certainly agree with what you're saying about those windows, though. We've got the rear windows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But particularly one's sort of on the side elevation to the flat roof. So
Well, just to add a footnote, do you happen to have a photo of the front elevation? Yeah, it's one of the peculiarity of the city centre. Not quite seen anything like it before, but that pilastra on the left there is topped by a window that must have been put in 20th century.
Mannerism, isn't it?
Personally, I quite like the quirkiness of it, but I suppose if you were looking at it from scratch, you'd think, well, is there an opportunity to kind of restore the original? Or is the quirkiness actually adding to the character of the city centre discussed?
What is that window proposed to serve? You got a second floor plan. Bedroom window.
Yeah, so it's useful, isn't it? Yeah, that's good.
I think we just stick with the quirkiness. Nice. Okay, thank you very much on that. So the next application on the list is Warden's Lodge, 107 to 111 Doctor Road, villa style buildings, very elegant buildings on London Road. The building's a grade 2 listed building, and the intention is it's used as a clinic at the moment, to carry out some internal alterations to the ground floor to form a treatment room, installation of sinks to the first floor, and the installation of external CCTV cameras. It seems to be the day for confusing applications, I'm afraid. Whilst the planning description refers to the alterations to form a treatment room, the full extent of the works still seems rather vague because there are other things indicated on the drawing. And part of the proposal appears to be the lining of walls with scribblable finish wall lining, which suggests it's going to cloak over existing features such as skirtings, cornices, and indeed chimney pieces, of which there are none recorded on the plans as existing, but they seem to have appeared on the plans as proposed. So again, confusing. And to cap that, there is an air handling unit being positioned over the top of the treatment room, which is ducted and seemingly through a suspended ceiling, which again, there's no mention of, but it's shown in section being directed out to the rear of the building with an air handling unit positioned outside the door. So there's no indication of the impact on historic fabric. There are also no supporting details and very weak heritage statement to accompany that. The second part involves the installation of some new sinks at first floor level. So, again, there is a 3D diagram that shows the routes for drainage, but it doesn't show how it connects to the existing drainage system or whether there are new downpipes, vent pipes, etc. Being proposed. All this information is really quite critical because, again, the drainage runs will potentially interfere with historic fabric. We don't know whether there is historic fabric, historic detail in there. We need this information to make a reasonable judgment on. I have no doubt that it can all be happily got over, but we need to see that before we make further comments on it. There is also a proposal to put CCTV cameras. There are 7 CCTV cameras being positioned around the exterior of the building, and there's a little sort of sales image of a very neat CCTV camera, which is to be positioned underneath the eaves. As you'll have seen on the building, there's quite an extensive overhang on the tucked underneath. And then in the text, they say that these are going to be solar powered with solar power panels positioned right on top of them, which defies me a little bit because they're being set underneath the eaves. So how are they going to work? They also increase the impact of those CCTV cameras quite significantly. So I'll open it up for more discussion.
I agree with all of your comments. So I think the lack of analysis is the problem here. And there's very little information about the existing building. So a few of the interventions that I picked up on that Bob mentioned specifically were the removal of some partitions and actually a load-bearing wall paste being removed at one location. And some new partitions and new door openings, which may all be fine, but we don't know that because there's no proper analysis of fabric or even photographs of the building.
Okay. Yeah, Chris.
Well, just dealing with the things that are in the actual description at the moment. Making your point. The creation of a treatment room, I suppose buildings as their uses change, or even within the it's quite legitimate thing for there to be minor alteration over a period of time. If the case is made, I think that they need a big room, take people out, do things to them, and then there's some flow of customers, you know, through the different stages of recovery or whatever, you know. So I can see, you know, that the actual creation of treatment, even though it means some alteration in terms of flow, is okay. And the cameras, I'm supportive of that. Really. They've got to be partially visible, you know, to have the deterrent effect, haven't they? Really, you know, we can see that there are cameras around the building, and it protects it, and we want to protect it as well as the occupier. So, but I like you can't understand you know, what that little drawing is of the cell panel above them, because they'll be in, you know, virtual darkness that being so close up to the, you know, a strong overhanging eave like that. You know, then maybe they'll just have to be powered wired directly into the an electric supply and not have that, because I certainly wouldn't want them to detach the panel and put it on the, you know, which is another temptation, isn't it? You know,
I just.
But anyway, that's, you know,
Okay.
It just needs to be clarified, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I'm okay with the so, and you know, overall, I didn't particularly see any great problem. You know, take one of a few things again that need to be ironed out.
Yeah, it is resolution, you know, detail. Yeah, I don't think
it's close to being provable.
Any further comment? No. Okay, so are we going to make this an objection subject to better detail?
Yes.
We're not against the principle, but we are against the fact that there is insufficient detail for us to actually judge it properly.
Yeah.
This is just a little adjustment of the description and other alterations.
I think it's a general clarification to be specific on what they actually want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the next application on the list is number 3, Brick Row, Darley Abbey. This is a Grade 2 style listed building, part of the Evans estate, obviously, and the proposal is to remove a non-breathable paint and sand cement render to the ground floor frontage and replace it with a lime render to carry out restoration of the adjacent sash windows. Now, we're advised that the render has actually been removed, and you will have seen from the photographs that, yes, there's a significant amount of moisture held within the wall, so it's had good time over the last few weeks to be able to dry out. There is this historic evidence that suggests that the panel has been there for quite a lot of years. Photographs of the 1950s show it as being there. There is also precedent elsewhere on Lavender Row with render panels on that. So the principle is okay. And what's happened, I gather, is that the sand cement render has held water behind it, and that's seeped into the side of the sash windows and caused rot down the side of the sash windows. But that's a restoration repair process rather than renewal. The product that they intend to use is something called Fassacouche. It's a French derivative, and this is a modern lime-based render, and it's a through colour render. It is not a traditional hydraulic lime render, because the difference between the two is significant, but it is a breathable render, so it will allow the base fabric to actually breathe and release moisture, etc. There does seem to be a little bit of conflict in the technical information, because one bit refers to Vassagouche and the other bit refers to Renepass Show, which is a slightly different product. So I'd like to see some clarification. And if the purists amongst us insist on it being a hydraulic line render, then we can put that forward as well. So I'll open that up to discussion. Matthew, yeah, tell you, desperate.
Yeah, I was confused because, as you've said, there is the application refers to Vassagouche. It also refers to Renepass, which seems to be different products. It isn't mentioned in the methods that's been supplied with Vassagouche. But also elsewhere in the application, it does refer to an HR 3.5.
It does. Yeah.
So I wasn't entirely sure what they were going to use. And with Vassagouche, I'm not familiar with. It has lots of cement content. They might agree with it has lots of cement content, so it's definitely not line render in my mind. So I thought
It's hydrated lime and cement, which are two go together. Okay, if you put hydraulic lime and cement together, you get a bit of a problem. Yeah.
The other thing I picked up was the email application regarding sills, changed things to the window sills, which didn't seem to feature in the description. But there was a clarification about them.
Yeah, that seemed to be completely random, and I couldn't work out where they were recommending that they have a 50mm overhang on the windowsill on a chamfered brick sill. So I think that's sort of a clarification of some detail that's required on that, whether they are actually going to go that, or whether they're going to stick with the flush sill, which has worked for a long time. But the worrying implication on that for me was that that was suggesting that it was a window replacement, whereas they're saying repair and restoration.
I think they've got the right intentions.
The intentions are completely honourable, but I think it's they've been pulled over their eyes a little bit by technical information. Yeah. So
just to help us non-technical people out, why would they have gone for this? Is it a cost issue, or why have they chosen this product as opposed to the traditional product that you seem to be indicating in favour?
Yeah, it's a very good point. This is actually an easier material to apply,
right?
Because a traditional lime render is built up in several layers over time and cannot be done in certain weather conditions.
Right. And
it will also ultimately need a lime-based paint finish, whereas this is actually all integral in the process thing. So it is a quick method.
And are all the others in the red and in that area, would they all be the traditional style?
Without going and poking and having a look at them, I suspect that they would all be.
So can we say that we would have a preference for that?
Well, I think we need to say that anyway, because I think it needs to be
Thank you.
The lime render is a proven product.
Yeah.
We don't know how this is going to operate in, and as Matthew said, it's got cementitious as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask whether the render removal was done with consent from officers or any dialogue beforehand? Because I didn't see a list of buildings set for its removal.
It wasn't. They just wanted to get it off and get the brickwork to breathe, which is, we can forgive that because, as we said before, the intentions of what they want to do is absolutely right. I think they just need steering in the proper direction of a traditional treatment.
clearly failed as well. They could see it.
Yes,
It was bubbling up.
it was bubbling,
You know,
pitted. Obviously,
it wasn't an option to keep it.
It was more whether the
Yeah.
brickwork underneath could have been saved.
no,
Is too far gone.
that's been scotched and as part of it. So, yeah. So we, in essence, we welcome what they're trying to do, but we would ask that they do the more traditional hydraulic NHL line round.
Particularly as it's 2-star.
It's 2-star.
You know, I think that's what it's emphasising. There aren't very many 2-stars, are there?
Can I clarify, is that no objection when you say welcome, or is that an objection with?
I think we've got to say it as an objection because the materials that they're proposing, the principle of what they want to do is welcomed, but the detail isn't quite. Right, thank you. The next application is for the Vernon Street Medical Centre, number 13 Vernon Street. This involves application for a 2-storey extension to the rear of the property, which also fronts onto York Street. There are some relatively minor internal alterations to facilitate the link between old and new. The building is grade 2 listed building, and the principal elevation faces onto Vernon Street. There is a heritage statement which accompanies this, which identifies the key historic elements of the scheme and the impact to some extent that the extension will have. The new extension is principally a brick structure, as you can see slides, and is of a similar scale to the existing building. And of course, that elevation you can see at the bottom there fronts York Street. There is a loss of 4 car parking spaces as the new extension extends over existing car parking spaces. There is some visual separation between the old and new, which is achieved by means of a vertical glass panel on the stairwell, which is shown on elevation, but on the plans it's not consistent. It shows a piece of masonry in there. There is also there's a side elevation missing from the application documents, which has been requested, but we've not received it as to date. In terms of context, the adjacent property at number 12 Vernon Street, which is also listed, and actually has a mixed residential and office use. The office use tends to concentrate on the Vernon Street frontage and the residential to the rear of the property. Moreover, it has pretty much an original rear garden and has been maintained as such over a long period of time. The new extension will undoubtedly have a detrimental effect on that, and also on the fact that it's a domestic property as well. The architects amongst us will agree that hopefully that the recognised approach when designing rear additions in such cases is that is to ensure that there is subordination between the host building and the new extension. So there's a diminished scale between the two. In this situation, it is, I think, a very critical factor as the composition is intrinsically linked to the smaller domestic properties along York Street. And the reduction, the tearing down in scale, if you like, between the Vernon Street frontage and the York Street frontage is, I think, a most important aspect. You can see on bottom elevation there that the heights all respond back to the original Vernon Street frontage. The glazed screen, there is no diminishment in scale at that. So I think I've sort of covered the essential elements of that. So I'll open it to discussion. Carol.
This building is a semi-detached with number 12, so built as a semi-detached pair by William Brown, a distinguished Regency architect. So you more or less see that building not from the side view but from the front as a pair with number 12. So distinguished architect, you're filling in the whole of the garden basically in this property, which I think is very sad. I know it's a car park now, but I think it will not be in keeping with the house next door at all. I think it's an inappropriate extension for this property. I know it's a doctor's and they need extra room, but I think it's an inappropriate place to put an extension in this area. What worries me is that the bonded warehouse development with hundreds of people going in, they're very worried that they won't have enough doctors for all these new people coming in. I think this is totally the wrong place to put an extension, where they could easily have possibly a couple of houses on the new bonded warehouse site as a doctor's surgery. This surgery also has an outpost in Littleover, so it's the Lanes Littleover, where they had semi-detached house converted into a doctor's house surgery. I think this is totally the wrong place to put an extension. Full stop. Wrong place.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Anything else?
I have a slightly different view in as much as looking on the street towards the rear of the property there. It's a bit of a mess at the minute. It's had sort of ad hoc extensions and it's got that weird.
Yes.
Yeah. And the car park. And I'm trying to envisage the visual impact of what's proposed versus that. And I think on balance, my view is that it somewhat improves the look of the street. It starts to link the Lister building to the rest of the terrace houses as a street frontage. In other words, it's preferable to what's there now. I wouldn't go as far as to say fabulous award-winning design, but I think it's polite enough. And given the greater good, you know, of providing extra facilities for the doctor's surgery, I'd tend to favour it. I wouldn't object to it personally.
Yeah, sorry, George.
Yeah, whilst we've got that picture on the your attention to chimneys really, because you know, the small opposite there and some further down the bottom. I think this building and the adjoining building had them removed in the past. And I'm just wondering, with you know, kind of taking up your theme of subservience and subordination, you know, the reinstallation of chimneys onto the building, give it, you know, that additional height and the importance that has been lost. Really, it's very. They're both very plain when you from I think that is in large part through to lots of that particular feature. You know? So maybe that's something that can be used on the main building. As a
Those have to be artificial because they're taken out of the braces all the way down.
I don't know that. Yeah, they seem to be still showing. Below, but I couldn't. So that's just a thought on that. But it is a bit of a mess from this angle. It could tidy things up, something. Step down. So that's that link. Because it could be refined as well.
I do think that
Carol, makes an important point. The spaces between buildings are often as important as the buildings in a conservation area. All the spaces up, and it's a very different character of area, isn't it? But in this particular case, it's not a pleasant area in any way. It's being boxed, and you're going to see the extension against the backdrop of the back of the building. So I think I could see an extension going in there, but of a reduced scale. There's a loss of parking spaces and so on. That again affects the character of the area, but it's marginal.
Yeah.
In that respect. So
you are going to lose the view to the back of number 12 and the adjacent attached unit as well, all of which are.
I think I can see an extension, but more work needs to be done. I think.
Because presumably the design intent was to copy the existing building, and that's why they've gone for the height and scale of this. It is because it's just exponentially increasing it, and it doesn't need to be that high. Ceiling heights to be reduced. Sure. So I've no problem with this. Just the reduced scale.
Yeah. Just looking at the elevation, it looks as though the floor levels tie up through the extension to the existing building, don't they?
They do.
And I'm guessing that wheelchair access is always a.
There is a lift, and there is the opportunity of actually doing something in there because there are two stairways, so you could do a transition between the two, and a bit of management on that. I think it could be made to work, but even if you just reduce the first floor to ceiling height,
A bit tight, but yeah. I mean, we could always redesign everything, couldn't we? I suppose.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So we're judging it on what we've got presented before us. Councillor Pandy.
Thank you. My question to Ian. Ian, has this application come to the planning before as well? And did it get rejected or?
Yeah.
This is the first time.
Before what to the council or before planning committee?
Yeah, has this been previously made? Same application has been or this is the first time they made this application?
The application advice.
They had, okay.
Council, yeah.
Because this is from my ward. I represent Macbeth, the New Zealand ward, and I completely disagree with all the objections that have been made so far. Because we do need doctors' facilities, and this is going to be a welcome addition, especially in the heavily populated area. We can go on rejecting all the applications, but we don't have any solutions. We are crying for a medical center in Macbeth for a long time. And any place we would recommend, people will object, or we're losing green spaces, make it in the new area. But unless we get it, it's going to be very, very difficult. This is an established medical facility. And I think the idea behind that is quite, normally it's going to be an additional facility. We are crying for it. So if we just keep objecting, it's not going to help the resident.
I think
I was not objecting, but I feel that there is a small addition for the area. It's too small, and I think it's the wrong thing to do. I think they need to expand near the bonded warehouse, rather than tack a little addition on to a house where they've got to cope with hundreds of new people in the bonded warehouse area. Sorry.
That's fine.
So
I was just going to say, as far as this committee is concerned, you know, the whereabouts of the doctor's surgery isn't what we're here to discuss.
No, it's not.
It's, you know, we're here to discuss, you know, and make recommendations on the
We've got
schemes
to
of
do
street.
them.
We've got our own remit, haven't we, from a conservation and heritage point of view. So, you know, the other arguments are, you know, maybe valid arguments, but that's not what we're here to do.
We're making our comments in terms of the heritage,
Yeah.
and that will have to be taken into account. Planning officer deals with the application. There's a balancing process there. So yeah, I take on board what's said there. Yeah, it's not the principle that we're actually objecting to. It's I think more the detail, the fact that the diminishing scale would actually help the building integrate more into the smaller scale buildings on York Street. It would help the rear at number 12 Vernon Street, which is still partially residential. Any further comments, Matt?
Yeah, I think if we accept the principle of development is okay, I think the application is lacking a lot of information about materials, detail.
It's the
A couple of other things is that I was actually surprised that with that glazed link that they've installed, they haven't taken the opportunity to consider some accessible entrance in on that size, because my understanding is that the front entrance, there are steps to it, put a ramp which sort of takes a convoluted route around the back of the building, and they might actually be able to improve the accessibility situation. And the other thing that we haven't really talked about is the changes to the development, which I think is certainly minded, but on the ground floor, they seem to be reconfiguring rooms, which doesn't seem to actually make much of a difference in the end. But building this historic fabric, it still doesn't achieve compliance, for example, with the access to the accessible toilet to occupy after all these works. And on the first floor, the changes they're making seems to be for the right reasons, but they do seem to be disrupting what I guess the historic landform. So whether that could be reconsidered, I don't know.
Sorry, Chair. I also note that they're adding a new window into the first floor into historic fabric.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Albeit it's not into the current building, but it's part of the stub wall, isn't it? And just if they're adding in a new window to historic fabric, can we have an evaluation of that and the detail in terms of what that window will be made out of, and the sills and the sash itself?
So, in essence, then we happy generally with the principle of an extension, but we'd like to see a diminished scale. We'd like to see more detail in terms of materials and the rear elevation, which we're looking at the moment. We want to see justification for the new window that they're putting in the side of the building, and also for the internal alterations that they're carrying out. Okay, happy with that?
Can I take that as a proposal? Just ask for a seconder and then just asking for a vote, seeing as there was disagreement, just for the.
Yeah, okay. So
Is there a seconder for that?
proposer? Yeah, seconder. Councillor Bandy.
Is there to take a vote on that, please?
Take a vote on it. Yeah, those in favour of the extension as it is.
Sorry, hang on. Those in favour of your summary of the proposal that you've made. So the decision would be, as you've set out, the recommendation you've made in terms of happy with the principle, but the list of
Diminished. Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Those in favour of that? Those against?
Obviously, the partners who run this practice want that to go ahead as is. And the danger is that if it does get blocked, then they'll go and find some bigger premises, and 12 months from now, we'll be looking at that being converted into an HMO.
That's the risk that we've got to take, that we can't accept. There's not too much that needs to be done to it to actually make it acceptable. I think that message needs to go back to the applicants. Okay, so that actually concludes the applications to be considered. Anything else, Ian, that you?
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, as a ward councillor, can I second the? Is there a conflict of interest for the application, or is it okay? Because I'm the ward councillor for the.
Council for it.
As the ward councillor, that wouldn't be a conflict of interest.
It will be. Okay.
Anything else, Ian?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll actually formally close the meeting.